N-scale is great, but it does have its problems. I've been an N-scaler for years, and I love it, but here are some of the issues I've encountered. Hey everybody, my name's Jimmy. Welcome to Coffee and Trains. Today I am drinking some more of that Kawhi coffee. Really good here. If you want to tell me what kind of coffee you are drinking and have it listed just like these guys right here, you can put that in the comments below and you might see your comment up on another episode of Coffee and Trains. Cheers, guys. I'm going to break this down into two categories, size and product. Let's start with size. N-scale is small. Depending on where you are in the world, it is 1/148th to 1/160th scale, which is roughly around 54% the size of HO scale. It's by no means the smallest scales. There are two scales readily available that are smaller, Z and T scale, and 3 if you count nanoscale, which is 1/1000th. Yeah, that exists. But N-scale is the second most popular scale by many measurements, and that means that it can really be viewed as a competitor to HO scale. This means that N-scale manufacturers try to put as many features into N-scale locomotives and rolling stock as HO counterparts, barring any sort of manufacturing techniques that hinder it. A lot of these details on higher end models are very fragile and have to be handled with care. I love my Scale Trains Rivet Counter locomotives, but those things are so detailed that I've considered buying white gloves to handle them. Now, of course, you have some issues with this in every scale, but there are far few places to grab and handle a locomotive in N-scale without breaking or damaging something, which makes it more perilous. My son is 4 and is obsessed with trains, because I'm raising him right. I want to share my layout with him, but I'm afraid he will break a very expensive locomotive that I have. Now, he's pretty good about listening, but there's still a few issues. The size factor is not only an issue with fragility, operations are tougher in N-scale. Uncoupling can be quite a hassle if you don't have the proper tool, which in most cases is a bamboo skewer, because that works pretty well. But it's pretty much guaranteed that at least one car will derail during an op session while you're coupling or uncoupling just because of their weight. Another issue where size is the driving factor is DCC. Yes, DCC is extremely common in N-scale, but decoder choice is a bit different. There are plenty of decoders out there, but N-scale locomotives typically need some sort of drop-in decoder that is designed to fit a specific locomotive. This is very true of Kato, Atlas, and Athearn. Now, the decoders are pretty easy to install, but it would be nice to have a wider selection and have different options. This is changing though with the Next18 socket. Think of this as the 21-pin decoder socket of N-scale. Now, Scale Trains and Broadway Limited use this for their DCC-ready locomotives, and I can see it getting wider adoption. Now, the other main issue that I have when I'm doing stuff in N-scale is product selection. Now, before I get into this gripe, I will say that when I started in N-scale in the late 1990s, it has gotten way better in terms of product selection. But that being said, it still does not compare to the product selection of HO scale. There are some manufacturers that just don't make N-scale. When I was randomly checking various availability of products from manufacturers who do both scales, some of the ratios of HO versus N-scale products were as high as 9:1 in favor of HO scale. Now, there are a few manufacturers out there that primarily focus on N-scale, like Kato, Microtrains, Blueford Shops, and Trainworks, but of all of those, only one releases locomotives on a regular basis throughout the year, Kato. Now, other brands have greatly increased their support of N-scale, like Bachmann, Broadway Limited, and Atlas, but you do still have a lot more HO products being released and re-released on the market. Another side of product availability is the used market. Yes, there is plenty of used N-scale equipment out there, but since the scale was only officially created in the 1960s versus HO scale that actually started in the 1920s, advancements in manufacturing have been rapid. This leaves some older N-scale equipment unable to function without modification, which adds cost and defeats the purpose of buying used sometimes. A great example of this is older locomotives in rolling stock that have large wheel flanges, those pizza cutter flanges, and those cannot run on N-scale Code 55 track because the rails are not tall enough and your cars will just derail. My Concours RDC that I have that I love is affected by this. Typically, I have to look from the mid-1990s onward, and even then, I'm probably swapping out a Rapido coupler for a knuckle one. Now, don't take this the wrong way. I love N-Scale, and I wouldn't change. I'm a big scenery guy, and I like depth to my scenes. N-Scale gives me more of that in a smaller space. Ultimately, it is up to you to determine what matters most, and N-Scale checks more important boxes for me than any other scale. Thank you all so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, drink some coffee, and happy railroading.